Hey, what's going on? Luke here, and we're here to do my preview and tips for round 19 of the 2021 NRL season. Now, just before we get into the tips, I just want to give a special shout out to Drum Clothing. They're a surf, street, and skatewear brand out of the Central Coast, and their clothing is of the highest quality. You can see here I'm wearing one of their shirts. In fact, I'm wearing a long sleeve tee. It is a bit cold at the moment, but you can see there it is, Drum Clothing. Go and support them. It's really essential that you do support companies like them in the times we're going through in terms of the COVID stuff. So definitely go out and support them. And once again, a big thank you to them for coming on board the channel and supporting me and believing in my channel. Anyways, now we've got the intro out of the way, let's move on to the first game, which is the Parramatta Eels taking on the Canberra Raiders. Now, both of these sides come into this game off a win. The Eels obviously reeling off the information that Mitchell Moses is going to be out for a little while. Actually got injured in State of Origin, so credit to him for playing 70 minutes with essentially a broken back. There's some sort of bone that was broken, so he's going to be out for a little while. Now, his replacement in the number 7 jersey will be Jacob Arthur. Now, to be honest, that's a huge downgrade. I think we can all see the quality of Mitchell Moses. Obviously, he's playing State of Origin for a reason. I know Nathan Cleary is the first choice, but your second choice is Mitchell Moses. That's a pretty good second choice. And for the Parramatta Eels, losing him, it's going to be huge for the side. Now, thankfully, it's not going to be a super long-term injury, but he's going to be out for a little while. But Dylan Brown is there. He can steer the ship. And we've seen in the past when Dylan Brown needs to step up, he can do it. It's just more so that he doesn't need to do it all the time because Mitchell Moses is there. Still got Gutherson there. Still got Reid Marnie. Well, I say still got Reid Marnie, but Reid Marnie's made his return into the side. So I think they have enough to get the job done against Canberra. In terms of the Canberra side, it is a bit of a strange side. It just seems so weird seeing Sam Williams in the side and not George Williams still to me. And this week, there's also no Jack Whiten as well. So it is a very different Raiders side to what you would have expected going into this year. But coming up against the Eels, this is probably the best time you want to take on the Eels, considering that Mitchell Moses is out. But I will say the Eels, I think they're just going to be too strong. I will just touch on the fact that their backs are actually quite strange as well. They've got Will Penasini. I don't really know much about him. Blake Ferguson is back in as well, but Sivo's still there. I think they'll still just have too much strike power in the forwards and the backs, and I think in particular the forward pack is very strong for the Eels, and I think they'll be able to get the job done against the Raiders. Now, there seems to be a little trend where I tip against the Raiders and the Raiders seem to come out and win, and it has been picked up on with some of the viewers, but once again, I'm going to be tipping against the Raiders. I'm going to be picking the Parramatta Eels to win this one. I think Para win this one 1-12. I don't think it'll be a blowout, but I think the Eels get the job done. Now, onto the second game of the round. It's the Sydney Roosters taking on the Newcastle Knights. I keep having the habit of saying the Sydney Roosters hosting the Newcastle Knights, but it's not the fact. Even though the Roosters are technically the home side, they're all playing away from home, so it is a weird situation at the moment. But the Roosters, they've sort of been getting into some scrappy games. It looks like the game's on the line, and then all of a sudden, the Roosters put the foot down and usually end up running away with it. And that's exactly what I see happening against the Knights. The Knights were absolutely terrible last week. I expected them to really give it to Melbourne. I know Mitchell Pearce pulled out in the lead up, and that's obviously, if you lose Mitchell Pearce last minute, it's definitely going to be a hard replacement. Kind of similar to what we're just talking about with Mitchell Moses. And the fact that we've seen the Knights play the most of the season without Mitchell Pearce and they've looked terrible, and then he finally comes back into the side and they start to hit a little bit of form, adding Caleb Ponga there as well. I don't think it's a coincidence. And Mitchell Pearce not being there last week, taking on easily the best team in the comp, maybe the best team in the history of the NRL. That's how good Melbourne are going. But yeah, the Knights, I think they were never really a chance of winning it. But I just thought they'd just give it to Melbourne a little bit more, maybe score a couple more points. Instead, it was just another training run for Melbourne. So it was quite disappointing. But the Roosters have shown enough for me to say that they can win this game and they can win it well. But you just know with the Knights, you just never know. They're so unpredictable. They've got a great forward pack. They do have some good backs. But for me, the fact that Mitchell Pearce hasn't been named to play and probably won't play, I just can't pick him without Mitchell Pearce there. And the Roosters have been, so I'm not going to say they've been red hot, but they've been going pretty good as of late. So I think the Roosters, they should win this one, and I think they'll be making their charge towards the top 4. Yeah, I think the Roosters are going to win this one 13+. Just before we go into the next game though, I will say this is quite interesting for the Roosters. Josh Morris in the extended bench. Looks like he's being dropped. I don't know if that's a sign that this might be the end of Josh Morris, but it is a little bit disappointing as a big Josh Morris fan. But yeah, it was just an interesting thing. I didn't think you'd ever see him in the reserves. Now we move on to the last game of Friday night. It's the North Queensland Cowboys taking on the Melbourne Storm. Now I think this is a pretty straightforward one. I'm going to say Melbourne Storm 13+. They've just been destroying absolutely everyone put in front of them. I think they got something like a 14-game win streak. They've just been so dominant in 2021. I say dominant in 2021. They won the comp last year. They've been dominant for the last bloody 15 years. That's how good the Melbourne Storm have been. But even more so this year, they've been so good. And that's without some of the better players. Pappenhausen is actually named to return. He's going to be on the bench. And I wouldn't be surprised if that's where he remains for the rest of the season. You got your little X-Factor player. Last year was Nico Hines. Even at the start of the season, it was Nico Hines. And then before that, it was Ryan Pappenhausen. So, little puppy finds himself back on the bench in a position that he's actually familiar with. So it'll be interesting to see if he actually ends up playing, or does he sit on the bench for the whole game, or do they drop him before the game? Because it is a concussion issue. So I wouldn't even be surprised if he doesn't actually play this game. But Look, the Melbourne Storm, they are red hot at the moment. And even though the Cowboys haven't been playing that bad, I mean, the Hammers actually been in pretty good form. The actual side in general hasn't been too bad. They've just been coming up against some pretty good sides, like the Roosters last week. But Melbourne, they're just at next level to everyone else. And if they're already losing to the Roosters, you bet your ass they're going to be losing to the Melbourne Storm. Melbourne Storm 13+. There's nothing more that needs to be said. Now we move on to Super Saturday. It's the South Sydney Rabbitohs taking on the New Zealand Warriors. Now I think this will be a really cool clash. You've got Roger Tuivasa-Sheck, Reece Walsh taking on just the explosiveness of Latrell Mitchell, Cody Walker there as well. Now the Rabbitohs were definitely off the pace last week and the Bulldogs really gave it to them. And for a good part of the game, I thought maybe the Bulldogs were going to sneak a victory here, which doesn't really say a lot of good things about the Rabbitohs, but Latrell Mitchell didn't play for them, and as soon as he's in the side, they're a completely different side. We saw at the start of the season, I think when he was suspended, we saw them not play too well, and then as soon as he came back into the side, then all of a sudden they were back in form. So he definitely adds a lot to that side, and as soon as you add Latrell Mitchell to any side, in fact, they're probably going to be a pretty darn good side, and that's exactly what the Rabbitohs are. The Warriors, on the other hand, are super unpredictable. Obviously, Matt Lodge signed for them, and I thought he was quite good for them last week. A lot of their forwards, they really get in, they do a lot of the hard yards, but I feel like they're lacking a little bit in the halves, but I think Chad Townsend is back this week. I think he'll be a good inclusion in the side. Adding Nick Aruma's there as well. Jazz Tavunga's there in the number 9, and he can do a decent job there as well. But you got Reece Walsh at fullback, Roger Tuivasa-Sheck on the wing. This is a very good Warriors side, and probably the best we've seen all season, but I still just can't see them getting the victory here. I just think the Rabbitohs, you can't really bet against them. The Rabbitohs are super strong, and I think they will get the job done. I think the Warriors will give it to them for parts of the game, but I think it's sort of be similar to a lot of the Rabbitohs games. They kind of just need to play as good as they need to, and then eventually they'll sort of just coast and they'll run away with it. So I think it will be a Rabbitohs victory 13+, but I think the Warriors they'll score a couple of points. I think they'll be quite entertaining to watch, and I think in general this will be an entertaining game because of all the superstars and all the flashy players. So yeah, this is definitely a must-watch for me. Now moving on to the second game of Saturday, it's the Manly Warringah Seagulls taking on the West Tigers. Now for me, this is another one that is a must-watch. I think this is going to be a great game. Now obviously the West Tigers documentary has just been released, and you got to see a little bit of insight into the club. And one thing that really stood out for me was Adam Doueihi, his leadership, and he's actually showed it on the field. A lot of fans have picked up on it, and it was good to see in that documentary that they were sort of just able to confirm that, because I thought he's been one of the better players for them, even in the last couple of years. So credit to Adam Doueihi. But this Manly side, if Tom Trbojevic is there, they're nearly unstoppable. I think the only team that can stop them is probably, Melbourne and Penrith, and that's Penrith at full strength. And I don't even know if that's going to be the case for the rest of the year. So Manly, they're definitely a contender for 2021. Taking on the Tigers, it shouldn't be too much of a challenge for them. And even going into the season, I know there was a lot of rivalry between the Tigers and Manly, and it all stems back to a trial. So the Tigers beat Manly in a trial and carried on a lot, and then Manly came out and just wiped the floor of them throughout the whole actual season. So I think this is actually going to be a good clash, but not in the sense that it's going to be a competitive game. I think Manly are going to wipe the floor of them, to be honest with you. But I think Tom Trbojevic is going to have a good game. I think you're going to see some entertaining plays from Saab and Garrick and all that sort of stuff. But I think the Tigers themselves have enough sort of firepower in the back to just score some pretty lucky tries, or maybe not even lucky tries, but some entertaining tries. So I do think it will be a good game to watch. I don't think, like I said, it's going to be competitive, but I think it will be an entertaining game to watch. But in terms of a scoreline, I'm going to go Manly 13+. Now we move on to the last game of Super Saturday. It's the Penrith Panthers taking on the Brisbane Broncos. Now this, on paper, it's a total mismatch, but you look back to the previous game, the Broncos really gave it to Penrith, and I think the Broncos, you add in like Payne Haas, I think with those sort of players in their side, they can really give it to Penrith, and maybe they just have something where they're not a bogey side because Penrith ended up winning, but maybe they just have something to disrupt Penrith, and Penrith themselves haven't looked very good the last couple of weeks. Obviously that's going to happen when you take out your main guys, your number 7, your number 6, I don't care what team it is, you take out your halfback in 5'8", even just take out one of those players, and you're definitely going to be at a disadvantage. And the fact that Penrith had, arguably the best player in the comp going out, you add in probably the best 5'8" in the comp as well, both of them going out. So it's not just the best players in the team, this is literally the best players in the comp. So they were big losses. Matt Burton, Tyrone May, they tried hard. Tyrone May retains his spot at the number 7. Matt Burton moves back into the centres. Probably the best move for them. For me personally, I'll go Matt Burton in the halves with Jarome Luai, but Jarome Luai is back in the side, and that's a huge inclusion for them. I think they've really missed Jarome Luai. Even just his energy that he brings to the side. You have him, you have Brian To'o, just those sort of guys, even Stephen Crichton, just the guys who bring a lot of energy to the side. And when things aren't really going your way, you need those sort of guys who just lift the spirits and lift the team. And I think that's what those guys will do this game. And even if it does get a little bit scrappy against the Broncos, I think Penrith will be able to get the job done. I do think it'll be a 13+. Again, I keep saying 13+, is just how it is in 2021. But I do expect a pretty decent performance from the Broncos. I feel like they're finally starting to not find some form, but they're not getting annihilated every week. So it is definite improvements from the Broncos side as of late, but this Penrith side, I still think even with Nathan Cleary out, the rest of the side is pretty strong. It's pretty full strength apart from Nathan Cleary. Add in the talk of Pengai Jr. potentially joining up against the Broncos right now. How ironic is that? But yeah, I think that would be a great signing for them, and I think it'll be a great win for them as well. So I'm going to go Penrith 13+. Now we're moving on to Sunday afternoon football. The St. George Illawarra Dragons taking on the Gold Coast Titans. A somewhat home game for the Titans, even though they're the away side, but it is a Queensland side taking on a New South Wales side. So the Titans are obviously super disappointing last week. I was talking about in the lead up to their game against the Raiders that whoever won it would have won well. I picked the Titans to win it. Obviously, that didn't happen, but it was the Raiders picking up a huge victory. I think they scored like 40 points or so. So kind of what I said was right, just the wrong team. The Titans are definitely one of those sides capable of that sort of stuff. As are the Dragons. We've seen throughout the season, Dragons been picking up some pretty good wins and then following up with some pretty shit losses too. So it sort of is following the trend of this season. The Titans are hot and cold, as are the Dragons. Now, the Dragons obviously still trying to serve out their suspensions. Some of the players haven't even travelled to the bubble yet. So it is going to be interesting to see what the Dragons put out. Just looking at the side in terms of their ins and outs, it seems to be a lot of ins for the Dragons. Obviously, Bud Sullivan, Jaden Sullivan coming in for Corey Norman. I think that is an improvement, to be honest with you. I know just experience-wise and salary-wise, everything would say that Corey Norman is one of the stars of the Dragons. But for me, I feel like he's quite detrimental to the side at the moment. And I think even himself, he said, I don't want to hold back these young fellas. And one of them is Bud Sullivan. So he comes into the side. I think he'll be a great improvement for the side. I think his combination with Ben Hunt, I think will be quite good, because I feel like Ben Hunt can steer the ship around, then you've got Sullivan who can just play eyes up footy. So I think that will work well for the Dragons. Do I think they'll get the victory? It's hard to say because I don't really have any faith in either of these sides. I can see the Dragons winning. I can also see the Titans winning. You got Dave Fifita for the Titans. You got Tino. You got two guys who can really stand up if they want and just win the game themselves. In particular, Dave Fifita. But it's just a matter of if they can be shut down. If Dave Fifita can be shut down, you shut down the Titans. So it's so hard for me to say for sure that one team's going to win. But I am going to go a 1-12 game. I think it's going to be the Dragons picking up the victory in this one. I think they're just a little bit more consistent than the Titans. And like I said, if they can shut down Dave Fifita, I think he shut down the Titans. Now moving on to the last game of the round. It's my Canterbury-Bankstown Bulldogs taking on the Cronulla-Sutherland Sharks. Now this is the team that the Bulldogs won their first game against, the Sharks. Now going into that game, it looks like a fairly similar side to what they put out in that same game. And the Bulldogs beat them that time. Do I think it's going to happen a second time? I think so. I'm actually going to say the Bulldogs might win this one. I don't want to say for sure. It's kind of similar to the previous game. Like, I can see both of these sides winning. The Bulldogs have definitely been a lot better the last couple of weeks, and I feel like they finally settled on a halves combination of Lachlan Lewis and Averillo. And I know Lachlan Lewis, everything he does, it just looks so uncoordinated and looks so shit. And even the whole thing with Cody Walker last week, he's so frustrating at times, but he's also a guy that just, when he plays, for some reason, the Bulldogs play well and they win. And I don't care if it's scrappy, I don't care if it looks good, but the Bulldogs get wins. And I know he didn't even play the last time that they played the Sharks and they picked up the victory. But for me, the Bulldogs side is a better side when Lachlan Lewis is in the squad. Just looking at the rest of the side though, Nick Meaney's still there. He's been hot and cold. Pretty much the rest of the side has been hot and cold. But Luke Thompson moves to the lock position. Sia Manafanai comes into the starting side. And Jeremy Marshall-King returns and Sione Katoa is out of the side. Now, it seems weird that Sione Katoa is out of the side considering I feel like he's actually had a little bit of form. I don't rate him at all. I really don't like him. But it seems weird that he finally shows a bit of form and you get him out of the squad. And you throw in Jeremy Marshall-King, who's sort of been hot and cold himself. But one shining light for the Bulldogs the last couple of weeks, ever since he's come into first grade, is a young fella off the bench, Bailey Biondi Odo. I don't know if I pronounced that right, but he's been an absolute weapon. I see him and he just looks like an absolute gun. I don't want to say it's similar to when Averillo was on the bench, because when Averillo was on the bench, he had little glimpses of doing some good stuff, but you weren't like, oh yeah, he's going to nail this position. Whereas this guy, he looks like he could nail down that number 9 position. He looks that good when he comes onto the field, and you can just see the players lift. So I think if the game's in the balance when he comes onto the field, I think the Bulldogs are definitely a chance. Now for the Sharks, I think they just need to complete their sets and not do anything stupid, and I think they should get the win. But we know with the Sharks, they're so hot and cold, like I was talking about earlier. They're hard to predict, because this is a game that on paper, even just form-wise, everything says the Sharks will win this one, and yet I still have no confidence that they'll actually win it. And I don't know if the Bulldogs are just a bad matchup for them, but you look at them like Sean Johnson, even Trindle, like they should be able to rip apart the Bulldogs, but I don't think they will. I just don't think they will. And I could be wrong here, and I probably will be wrong, but yeah, I'm going for the Bulldogs upset here. I don't know if that's head or heart or both. I don't know what it is, but guys, I'm predicting a Bulldogs victory. I think it will be a close one. I think it'll be 1-12, but I'm still going to predict a Bulldogs victory. Anyways, those are my tips and predictions for round 19. Leave in the comment section below, what are your tips and predictions? Do you rate mine? Do you hate mine? Do you like them? Do you rate them? Just let me know in the comment section below. Also, if you happen to enjoy this video, make sure you go ahead and smash the like button and subscribe to the channel if you're new around here. Also, make sure to use the notification bell. It's way more reliable than the sub boxes. Use the notification bell and don't miss any of my videos. Also, give me a follow on social media. It's on the screen right now. It's Mr. Luke on YT for the most part. It's Mr. Luke just for Facebook, but for everything else, it's Mr. Luke on YT. Also, once again, shout out to Drum Clothing. They've joined the channel. They've been supporting me. They're a bit of a sponsor, so thank you so much for them for joining me. But that's where I'm going to wrap up this video. Hopefully you did enjoy it. Stay tuned for more content on the channel. Going to be uploading plenty of videos still. Just because State of Origin is over doesn't mean the channel is over, and I keep saying that, but I really do mean it. So stay tuned for more content on the channel, and I'll see you in the next video. See yous!